Hey, hello everybody. Happy time zone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're at. Welcome to the live stream. I'm Ian Douglas. I'm a senior developer advocate at Postman. And with me today, I've got Barry Owen from Wowza joining us. And we'll get into some introductions in a minute. But today we're actually going to be combining two things that I really love. We're going to get into live streaming, and we're going to talk about 3D printing and how we can basically do some monitoring of my 3D printers using live streaming. And so we're gonna get introduced to Barry and who Wowza is, and some of the underlying technologies that Wowza is involved in, and then we're gonna give a brief introduction into what 3D printing is all about, and then we're gonna show off some 3D prints, and we're gonna get my 3D printer up on a screen, and we're gonna basically learn how we can live stream a 3D printer using APIs inside of Postman. So Barry, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. It's been great chatting with you over the last several weeks. So why don't you give us a bit of background on you, and then we'll get in talk a little bit about what Wowza is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the Chief Solutions Architect here at Wowza. One of my many roles I've been through at Wowza. I've been here about 10 years. So more or less 10 years experience with streaming in particular. And always been a super interesting space. Obviously, lots of things have changed over the last 10 years, and lots more to come. It's very interesting, a very dynamic environment, which I really like. Like hearing how people, use streaming for what uses other than just media and entertainment, especially, right? So all the other things you can do that don't necessarily get a lot of press.
Yep, for sure. So how did you get into like the whole video side of it and getting into live streaming and the technology side of what Wowza does?
So my background is a software engineer. So I was a software engineer. I worked at Adobe for a long time, worked at a few startups, and the founders of Wowza were actually ex-Adobe people. So circled back at some point later on when they were looking to grow the company. I think I was the 20-something employee. In 2012. So joined up, didn't know a ton about streaming at that point. I started at Wowza as the VP of engineering and kind of to grow the engineering team and, do things with Agile and stuff like that I'd had experience with, and then just picked up streaming along the way. Bunch of cool projects, learned as much as I could, had a lot of fun with a couple apps that we wrote for mobile live streaming and things like that. So and built a cloud service, which is what we're going to show today.
Sweet. Awesome. That sounds great. Cool. Well, before we dive too deep into it, one thing that we like to do on our live streams is we start out with a segment called In Case You Missed It. And basically it's just kind of going over like what have we done in the Postman product and blogs and videos and things like that since last live stream, which was just a week ago. And hi to everyone in chat coming in. A lot of folks hanging out on LinkedIn today, which is great. We're also streaming on YouTube and Twitch using a platform called Restream, and Restream actually uses Wowza to actually do their live stream. So it's kind of interesting that we've got Wowza on here. We're coming full circle, but we'll get into a little bit of In Case You Missed It. And so one thing that we like to show, I'm just going to close up chat here for just a moment, is we have our release page where we talk about all the improvements and things that we've done. I think the last time I live streamed, we talked a little bit about the changes that we've made to OAuth 2, where now it's going to use your refresh token. And then we've also made some changes around the Open API 3 definitions, where you can start to reference now multiple files. And so you don't have to have everything in one gigantic Open API spec anymore. You can actually break that into smaller files and actually reference those files in the interface. On our blog, we're constantly blogging stuff. Joyce just came out with a brand new blog post yesterday about how to review your Postman test results. And so you can go give that a read. And Joyce has also been really busy, as well as others on the team like Pooja, coming up with some really fantastic videos, and you can go check that out on our YouTube channel as well. But Joyce has been doing a really great job writing up these blog posts. All right, so Barry, let's dive in a little bit and talk about Wowza. Can you give us like just a brief history on Wowza, and then we'll go into your screen share. But like, how did Wowza get started? What was kind of the impetus for getting into kind of this underlying live stream technology that other companies are building on top of?
Yeah, I think the short answer to that story is the founders, Dave and Charlie, were looking to start a company, and their story was, they were going to go start a company. They didn't necessarily know what it was, but they had to be able to support a Starbucks habit, of a few dollars a day within a few months of starting it, to see if it was a viable business or not. So, then the cool thing about Wowza is, they went through a couple of things and then ultimately settled on basically a replacement for Flash Media Server that was more open, more expandable. And that was kind of what the starting point was, is an easier, less expensive, more open, more programmable, more modular version of that, which, at the time, that's what streaming was. It was mostly Flash-based. This was in 2007 when they launched their first version of this.
Yeah.
Obviously, streaming has changed a ton over that time. And along the way, the core product was Wowza Streaming Engine, which was, an installable software product. And that product grew to be a very, the Swiss Army knife of video processing, right? I mean, it can take in pretty much anything and output into standard formats. So it's a super flexible, and it was designed to be expandable. So it has a full Java API. You can write your own modules for, you can get down to the bits of the video and do pretty much anything you need to a video stream along the way. So it's a very powerful building block. And as such, it became infrastructure for people. So people began to use Streaming Engine as their core infrastructure. You mentioned Restream. Sorry. So Restream uses Streaming Engine internally to input streams, repackage them, and send them out to multiple destinations at once. And there's a lot of processing they can do along the way if they need to. You can easily do things like adding captions or overlays or whatever it is. So very flexible, very expandable. And then I want to say in 2013 or 14, we started a cloud service, which was effectively Streaming Engine in the cloud. And at the time, it was called Wowza Streaming Cloud. And that was really a SaaS expression of Streaming Engine. So that grew over time. It was really focused on live streaming in the beginning, which was kind of Wowza's sweet spot. The products handle video on demand and other sorts of streaming as well, particularly audio. Do a lot of audio streaming, but live was our sweet spot. And then fast forward a few years where the SaaS product is beginning to be really the core, because people are all moving to the cloud. One of the things we did when we designed the SaaS product was we made it very API focused. So whatever interface you see in Wowza Video is built on the Wowza Video API. We don't use any private APIs. We don't use anything that's not available to you as a developer. So it makes it real easy for people to leverage our experience. We have millions of hours of streaming under our belts. We know how it works. We know what works. We know what doesn't work. We know how to scale it. So, you don't need to go build your own streaming platform. You can just use our APIs. And
it's awesome. I actually remember working at a startup back in, I want to say 2005, about 2004, 2005. and they were doing some kind of live streaming using Flash, where they were like broadcasting some education content and so on. So yeah, it's interesting to kind of see how long this has actually been around, and building it out as a software as a service or platform as a service. So cool. I did drop a note in chat. We are going to be doing some giveaways today, so you will want to hang out. I'm going to be kind of picking names from all the platforms that we stream on. So we're streaming on Twitch, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and I'm going to be drawing names from each of those platforms kind of throughout the day, or throughout the session rather. We'll be going for at most 90 minutes. And so I'll be picking out some names and giving you some contact information for that as well. So you want to pay attention in chat, stay active in chat, because if you don't say anything in chat, I won't know that you're there. But I'll be picking some names as we go. So cool. Well, Barry, let's dive in a little bit more on what's going on with Wowza. Do you want to give us like a bit more of this background on Wowza?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
We'll get into 3D printing.
Absolutely. So, brief background on who Wowza was. We talked about it a little bit, but I'll do my little standard slide presentation here. So, Wowza is really the core of the video solution for builders, right? For builders and developers. We make it super easy to get started, as we'll see in a bit. But there's incredible depth behind it. There's tons of customization, tons of ways to deal with your video. We have a complete end-to-end platform from taking the video in from pretty much any source, whether that be a browser with WebRTC, a commercial encoder, or a 3D printer camera. And then we can run it through the platform for if you're a media and entertainment provider, we can do things like DRM and monetization features, and we have a player. Wowza acquired a company called Flow Player last year, so we have a best-in-class, HTML5 player that can play back on any device. And we're well known for our customer service and support. We have a 24/7 worldwide support team. We have professional services, so we can do whatever we need to do to get you up and running. So,
Great.
Go over this one quickly. We've been around a long time. We've been in the streaming space. We have a ton of experience. We have, almost 40,000 customers now in various flavors, and they range, right? So, you see some of the logos along the bottom of the screen. They range from super big companies with thousands of streaming engines deployed to people who are running IoT services on our cloud with, thousands of cameras streaming at any time. So,
Cool.
Or it could be just someone streaming their 3D printer. It can scale. And if your 3D printer goes viral and you need to stream to 1 million people, well, we can handle that. So
that's cool.
Wowza Video. So, as I mentioned, Wowza Video is a scalable end-to-end video platform. Heavily API focused. You can certainly use the user interface if you want. I tend to use the API, and I use Postman a lot to create streams and run streams. And I'll jump into the UI to do some monitoring. There's statistics and complete end-to-end monitoring. You can see how your stream's doing. You can see who's viewed it and things like that. And of course, all that's available with the API too. If you want to suck something into, Elasticsearch and do some visualizations or whatever, it's all easily done. So,
Great.
Really meant to be open and, as deep as you need, but you can do an awful lot with a very little. So, you're going to use 5 or 6 API calls to get a live stream up and running, and there's a ton more you can do if you choose, and it really how you need to integrate with your product, what your product needs to do, and really what your goals are.
Right. And we're going to get into some of these APIs today in just a couple of minutes. We're going to walk you through the whole sign-up process and talk about the free trial. And we're actually going to use some of these APIs to actually stream out my 3D printer here in a few minutes.
Yeah, super slick. And then, again, I tend to talk ahead of my slides a little bit, but that's okay. Um, you know, as a developer, what are you looking for? You're looking for everything you need out of a live streaming platform or a video on demand streaming platform in one place. Well, we have that. We can transcode, we can encode, we can package. We have a player. You can handle captions. You can handle security, encryption, DRM. We have an asset management system where you can either record your live videos and store them, or dump in your pre-recorded videos and use the search interface to build the next Netflix if you want. So whatever you need under the hood to handle your video, we have that for you.
Please make sure, folks, that you have the copyright to transmit video. don't just decide, hey, I'm going to be the next Netflix and start broadcasting stuff you don't have permission to.
That's right, because those people will watermark those videos and they'll be found. Other security technologies that are fascinating. And that one of the keys for Wowza Video is it's very, very flexible. We don't put any artificial limits on anything. You can do 8K VR360 video if you'd like, or you can stream a 360p traffic camera to 6 people. Whatever it is you need to do, we can handle it for you. And we also have provisions within the platform to do ultra low latency at scale. So tons of options, very deep. We're just going to be touching the surface here, and as we go through, we'll talk about some of the things that Ian could do next after he gets his 3D printer up and running.
Sweet. Sounds good.
And this is just, this will be on the recording for you so you can look at it. But this is like, typical live streaming workflow or video on demand streaming workflow. So, basically video comes in, gets processed, optionally gets recorded and stored, and then gets delivered. And it gets delivered via CDN. One person, a million people, doesn't matter. And along the way, you have many, many options with what to do with that video, whether your target is low latency or whether your target is, super high quality at scale. And you make choices, and we can help you with those choices to make the right ones along the way. And, both to suit your audience needs, your business case, and even your economics. So, it really depends on what you're after, but, we're very happy to help. We have an extensive documentation library online. You can literally go into Google and type Wowza and a video question, and you'll get a great answer. Tons of articles. Our docs team is great. They write tons and tons of stuff, as well as our blog is super informative. And, what should you be looking for in 2023 for video? What are some of the innovations? AI is a big thing. How's that going to affect us? Am I real or am I a talking head generated by a script? Sooner or later, you're not gonna be able to tell. Pretty cool, pretty interesting stuff. So that's us. That's what we do. Super fun to be here. It's been great to collaborate with Postman folks. It was cool to get our collection up there. We've seen a great uptake of that. It's cool. Lots of people have viewed it. Lots of people have forked it, and it's a great tool. I've enjoyed using it. I built a whole. We have our open API spec. That's the collection up on Postman. If you look at our GitHub, we also have a series I wrote that is a kind of a 6-part video tutorial for Wowza Video, which is accompanied by blog posts and videos, so you can walk through the whole thing.
I was actually walking through some of those to get up and running, and I'm like, oh wow, you like very prominently like, hey, I'm gonna go do all this stuff in Postman as part of your.
I couldn't have done it without Postman. It's so much easier. I could have done it with curl and pulled what's left of my hair out, but no, it was way easier to do in Postman.
Yeah, awesome. Good stuff. Well, let's talk a little bit about 3D printing. So again, we're going to be doing some giveaways today. So make sure that you're active in chat. I'll be picking names from all 3 of our platforms on YouTube, Twitch, and LinkedIn. So I asked Barry to grab a tube of toothpaste and a piece of cardboard or a piece of paper, And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to teach Barry how 3D printers work. So if you could, in chat, let me know in chat what kind of shape do we want Barry to draw, and keep it family friendly and professional, please. But what kind of shape do we want to draw? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get Barry to draw a shape in toothpaste on this piece of cardboard. Now, Barry, the way that 3D printers work is we generally have these spools of plastic, and they get melted down to a molten state. And basically, what the printer is doing is the printer is not like way far away from the print surface. It's actually fairly close, but it's not exactly touching. So we want to be just a little bit off the cardboard as we're drawing the shape. But give us some ideas in chat. Like, what kind of shape should we draw in here? Like, I might draw like a heart because Valentine's Day is coming up or something like that.
Yeah, something simple, please.
Yeah. We'll definitely keep it simple. Like, you know, I might do a hexagon because it's the bestagon. A Postman logo. Okay? I'm gonna try the Postman logo, but let's give Barry some choices here as well. But basically, the way that a 3D printer works is it's using a bunch of motors to move this print head around, and it's also using a motor to kind of feed this plastic onto the print surface. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna mimic just drawing some things out. So I think we'll go with Tracy's recommendation for you to draw a star. And I'm gonna attempt the Postman logo. So we'll see how well this is gonna work here.
Okay.
So
here we go.
We want to be like fairly close to the cardboard, but not directly on the cardboard. Wow, this is not gonna be pretty at all. Apologies to our graphic design team for what I'm about to do to our logo.
Oh, that's a bad start. Here's my
Yeah, well, here's my Postman logo so far. So the way that
the 3D printer on white, this isn't a great idea.
That's okay. That's all right. But what happens is when the 3D printer is actually printing out, this plastic hardens right away. And so what we're going to do next, Barry, is I'm going to get you to draw a second layer on top of this.
I'm going to do it
in that same toothpaste. And so we're gradually going to be building up a much thicker layer of our print material.
That's my horrible start.
All right. Did you do your second layer yet?
I'm going to try to do a second layer. I'm going to run out of toothpaste. Hopefully I have a backup.
Well, I only got one, so I'm probably only going to get a second layer here, but we can start to see like this is going to start to build up layer after layer of what's a really awful Postman logo on my side.
And an awful start, but it smells good.
Arlemi's asking, is this one of those don't try this at home streams? I actually highly recommend you try this at home. This is actually quite a lot of fun. And then let the toothpaste harden and then go draw another layer on top. Well, what's interesting is if we watch a 3D printer in action, this actually happens much faster. Like you can see this thing's just like going around and it's basically extruding this plastic really, really quickly. And in my printer's case, it's also doing multiple colors. And so it's about to go change a color and it's going to come back and it's going to draw a little bit of white and then a little bit of red, a little bit of blue. And it's doing this incredibly fast and incredibly precise. So this 3D printer, for example, you can get down to about 0.1 millimeter, which is like incredibly fine layers, as well as the resolution on the X and Y axis. And then you've got the Z axis that basically builds up layer by layer as it goes. And so we can get into some really interesting sorts of prints. You know, a lot of people think of like little knickknacks, like I make little, Minecraft figurines for my kids, or, we've got, let's see. My other favorite is Deadpool. So Deadpool's like one of my favorites, and so you can get into some really complex, very interesting sorts of things. You can also get into the functional prints, like we talked about. I built these hooks that go on the wall that my kids can hang on. When they're hanging up their towel, and they hold a lot of weight. But the neat thing, and Barry and I have been talking a lot about manufacturing, and could you get into printing like bike parts or car parts and things like that with 3D printing? You can get into printing with metals now. Is the way that these things are building up layer by layer. If you imagine if we build a layer that's solid and then the next layer up is kind of separated and the next layer up is kind of separated, you can start to build shapes like, a solid part with a hole in it and another part that's coming in sideways, and you can actually print hinges in place where mechanically you wouldn't be able to do that, by building metal parts. You'd actually have to split the metal like a chain link and link them together and re-weld it. But with 3D printing, we can get into very cool articulated sorts of patterns. And so these articulated dragons have been really, really popular. I've been giving a ton of these away on my live stream. Shameless plug, if you want to follow me on Twitter and Twitch, I use the same Ian Douglas 736 username on those platforms. But we can get into some really complex stuff. So what we're going to be doing today is we're actually going to be, I've actually been 3D printing these little Postman figurines. And so I've actually got some of those going on another printer over here. So I'm going to get that print resumed over here.
One of the things I was fascinated when we were talking about, Ian, is how relatively inexpensive this is, right? I mean, I would have thought, the printer you're showing me here that's doing all this stuff is like, many thousands of dollars, but it's really not. No. It's fairly accessible, and it's, honestly, it makes me want to go buy one and play with it.
You can actually get a low-end 3D printer now for about $200 and be printing, whether it's little knickknacks, but you can also get into the functional things as well. Like if you want to print things for around the home, decorations, or, I do little things like little pen holders and things like that, and little desk organization and so on. I don't have another camera pointed at it right now. You might be able to see some of it back here on my desk. I've got different like racks of parts for painting and filing and sanding and stuff like that. But what we can see here is we've actually got my 3D printers going over here, and they're actually printing out more of these little figurines. They're going to have some cool rust color backpacks, and they're kind of standing on some rust colored dirt. But these are what we're going to be giving away today. And so these are going to finish up in about a half hour. And so we've got a limited amount of time to get this into an API, get this live streamed, and get going.
Is it printing three at once there?
It's printing 3 of them at the same time, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yep. And so depending on the size of your printer, you could print, a whole bunch of something at a time. Like when I do the little Minecraft figurine that I showed, I generally do like 20 or 30 of these at a time. Yeah. And yeah, like give them away at our kids' school, and everybody loves them. So cool.
I was telling Ian as we were talking yesterday, it's like a connection of mine runs a company, and they're 3D printing rocket engines.
Yeah. So, wow.
If you want to see a cool use of 3D printing, go to launcherspace.com and just play around in their blog for a while. It's amazing the stuff they have created, and it blows my mind to think you can 3D print something that can withstand that kind of heat and pressure.
Yeah, for sure.
Super cool.
Yeah, because I mean, most of this plastic will remelt. Like if you leave it in your car, it's going to melt and not work out very well. But they do make plastics that are hard and resilient that you could build bike parts and things like that. But to get into more mechanical things like rocket parts or car parts, you're going to get into like 3D printing with metal. And we were chatting yesterday about how Adam Savage from Mythbusters did this 3D printed Iron Man thing out here in Colorado at the Colorado School of Mines, and they actually 3D printed it in titanium. You can go find that on YouTube a little bit later on. But all right. Joyce Joyce has a fantastic suggestion here. The next live stream we should print pancakes. So they actually make 3D printers that'll extrude food.
There you go.
And the popular ones are things like 3D printed pancakes or chocolate is another big one.
Oh, yeah.
But with the pancake, the interesting thing about the pancake is whatever batter you put down first cooks a little bit longer. And so then whatever you sort of put the batter around it that doesn't cook as long ends up as a lighter color. And so you can actually get into shading different shades of brown to make pictures out of pancake batter.
Oh, there you go.
So there's all kinds of really interesting stuff there. But yeah. Good times. All right. So Barry, what we're going to do is we're going to walk through the whole process of getting set up with Wowza. We're going to go into Postman. We're going to look at the Wowza API collection in there, and I'll be dropping those links in chat. Please make sure that you keep chatting, because I'm going to draw some names from all 3 of our platforms, and we're going to give away these Postmanauts that I'm 3D printing right now. In fact, the first name that I picked is Mary Snyder from LinkedIn. So I'm going to drop our contact info. So Mary, if you can contact us on our official Postman Twitter account and just send us a DM over there and let us know that that I drew your name. I've got a a copy of it here, but Mary, you're our first giveaway recipient. And so you're going to get one of those little Postman figurines. We'll get Barry back here in just a moment. Cool. So I'm actually gonna reshare my screen over here, and instead of showing my printer, I'm actually gonna show my browser, where we're gonna go get into signing up with Wowza, and then we'll get into the Wowza API. So if you want to follow along, I'm gonna kind of work at a pace that hopefully everyone can follow along. But we're going to start in just a Postman workspace as we normally would, and we're actually going to go find the Wowza workspace, and we're going to fork over a collection into my workspace, and then we're going to work at it from there. So the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to search in here for Wowza, and the first thing that we get, of course, is the Wowza Video REST API. So when I click on this workspace,
hey Ian, are you sharing your screen?
Oh, I shared the window, but I didn't actually display it. Sorry, everyone. So I searched for Wowza up here in the search, and we found the Wowza Video API. And then Barry, I noticed that we have. Let me rearrange our faces here. I noticed that we have a beta and a current. Yep. Should I be using the beta or the current API today?
You can use the current.
Current one?
We like to throw stuff out as our beta version. We tend to support 3 versions of our API at a time. We support current, 1 back and 1 forward. You can work with any of them, but it gives people a chance to try some of the new stuff. But know that if they need to go back, they can keep on a stable version of the API for a period of time.
Awesome. All right, so we'll get started on that, but I'm guessing I'm going to need some sort of authentication or something like that. So let's go.
Yes, you need an account
on Wowza. So tell us a little bit about this free trial. While you're talking us through that, I'm actually going to go sign up for the free trial. But can you talk us through what all is going to be involved in the free trial, what we're allowed to do, and so on?
You can do pretty much everything. The free trial for Wowza Video is designed to allow you to do everything in the platform. You get API access. We don't limit it. Basically, the only things we're limiting here is the amount of time you can stream, and the amount of resources you can consume at some level. But it gives you the ability to see what the platform can do, both from a UI and an API level. 30 days. It should be plenty of time. You're going to see us get up and running here in 15 minutes. So
it says I've already got an account with Postman. Oh no, there it goes. Verify your email address. All right, so I'm just checking my email over here.
The trial includes you get the hosted player page, so you don't have to go and find a video player. You get access to the analytics. You get access to monitoring the streams, live VOD. So everything you'll need to get up and running, get started.
Awesome. So I'm all set up over here. Let's go add that into my password vault for later. Cool. So I'm all set up with Postman, and let's see, free trial.
Very good. You can click on Wowza Video product there, and it should take you.
I gotta wait for
once last pass is done, or one password.
Yeah. There we go. All right. So Wowza Video product. All right. So here's our dashboard, and I'm gonna do this part later. Okay, so this is the Wowza dashboard, and then from here, how do I go find my?
Click on your account over there where it says Wowza user.
Okay.
Just go to account settings, and then there'll be a link on here to get to the token management. So one of the things here is there's a bit of a legacy on this page, which previous versions of the API have used a combination of an API key and an access key. But we have moved to a more secure JSON web token. And that's what we're going to show you today. So, Ian's going to click through and go to the token management portal, where he can then create and manage his tokens. And if you have a group of people, on the account, which most of our customers do, you can have production tokens, staging tokens, QA tokens, individual developer tokens, whatever you need. And that helps you manage, who created what at what time. And, it easily allows you to kind of separate your development from your production if you need to do that.
Great. All right. So for now, I'm just going to build a personal token because that's all we're going to need. And we'll call this 3D printing. All right. So I got my access token. So I'm going to copy that for now. And then go back over to Postman. So we've got so I've just got that on my clipboard ready to go. So we've got the Wowza workspace here, but I need to fork this over into my own workspace to actually be able to use this, because I can't change anything that Barry's team has made. So if you just search for Wowza in the Postman search in the interface, all I did was I clicked on the Wowza Video REST API, which is the first search result that comes up. And then for the current Wowza Video API, I'm just going to use the current version, not the beta. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on these 3 dots here that says View More Actions, and I'm going to say Create a Fork. And then this is going to allow me to fork this collection over to my workspace. So I like putting things in my automation workspace, so I'm just going to leave that as is. If you leave this checkbox enabled, anytime Barry and his team make an update, you'll see a little notification at the top of the interface in Postman as well that something's been changed. So I'm going to go ahead and fork that over. All right, so we've got that forked. And then, all right, so here's the Wowza. It's up at the very top of my list here. And I think that, yeah, okay. So we're all set to go. Now, as far as the authentication, when I click on the current Wowza, it currently says no auth. Our best practice here is you probably want to store that API token either in an environment, maybe not globals. I might go make an environment for mine just so I can keep my environments a little bit separate here. So I'm going to go make an environment really quick. So I'm going to click on environments in the context bar. I'm going to say new environment. And I'm just going to call this Wowza. And I'm going to make a variable in here, and we're going to call this auth token. And you can choose to make this default or secret. Again, if you put anything in initial value, it's going to synchronize it to the Postman cloud. If you store it in current value, it's only going to store on your local system. And if you choose
that's a good tip. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and if you choose secret here, when I paste this in, you won't be able to see it, even though you saw it on the previous screen or saw part of it on the previous screen. So I'm only going to set the current value. That way it's not going to synchronize with the Postman cloud. But the little dot in the tab up here indicates that I have unsaved changes. And so I'm going to go ahead and just use a keyboard shortcut to go ahead and save that. So if you're on a Mac, Command S will save. If you're on Windows, Control S will save. Or Linux, Control S will save as well. All right, so I've got an environment set up. So we're going to go back over here. So Barry, where do we get started with building out the live stream? Like we got a lot of different things that we got transcoders and targets and things like that. Like where do we get started here?
So the basic building block in Wowza Video is a live stream. So what we're going to do is we're just going to create a live stream, and as Ian goes through, we'll kind of talk about what that's doing and what you do with those return values and the things you need to put in when you're creating it in the first place. Okay.
All right. So I'm going to go over to live stream. So we're going to post a live stream. What do I need to do with that token? Do I need to set that up in the collection here anywhere?
So in your auth, you just want to make sure you're sending the bearer token there.
Okay. So I could do that at the post level. I could go into auth. But this is actually going to inherit from the parent. So this will actually inherit from the live stream folder. The live stream folder is also going to inherit from above that. So if I set it for all of the current Wowza, then everything under the current Wowza API is just going to inherit all the way down into all these other things. So I'm just going to set it at this very top level. And you said this was a JSON web token, so that's typically a bearer token.
Yeah.
And then it's asking for the token name. Now, because I put this in my environment, if I choose Wowza up here as my environment, then I can just use a handlebars variable here. So putting 2 curly braces around it, we're just going to call this auth token. And then that's going to pull it out of my environment. That will then allow me, if I want to change out my environment to use a different auth token, I can go between like a development mode, production mode, and so on. Makes it super handy for that. All right, so I also need to save that change. Notice we had that little dot in our tab up here. So I'm just going to close that off, and we're going to go in and we're going to create a live stream. Not going to save you. All right, so to create a live stream, looks like you've got some stuff set up here in the body. So let's go take a look at that. Pull this response down. And it looks like it's asking for things like what size is my video, where do I want to broadcast from, what kind of encoder I want to use. Now I know that my video format is going to be a little bit different than this. It's going to be 1168.
Exactly. And it's important that you know, encoders are different, right? There's standard sizes like 1080p and 720p, but in some cases you may get a little bit of an oddball size, and it's always best to match your transcoder with your encoder output. And then we'll talk a little bit about, as Ian gets started, you know, some best practices for setting your encoder output along the way as well.
Okay. So for my encoder, WebRTC is typically like using a browser to transmit a camera. Should I set this to something else?
Yeah, I believe what you're going to want to do here is RTMP. So you're going to, because we're going to use, in this case, we're going to use OBS to send the stream. And then I think what you're going to want to add in here also is we did want to create the hosted player page.
Okay. So
there's a field in here, and again, this is all easily accessible through the API docs or in my other tutorials, but it's just called hosted_page. And you're going to want to set that one to true.
Okay.
And let's see if there's anything else. Double checking. Let's add also, since we're going to be pushing RTMP directly, we're going to add delivery method in here. So delivery_method. And then the value for that is push. In quotes, yeah. Perfect.
Okay.
So there you go. Now you should be all set.
All right. Let's go send that over. Go look at the response coming back. If the auth works. All right. So we made a live stream.
And you'll notice some of the things, we didn't set this stream to record or persist an HLS archive. You know, if you want to, obviously you can. You know, the docs will tell you what the broadcast locations are. One thing, so for the delivery method, we set this to push, which means Ian's going to be configuring his OBS to send it directly to this transcoder. And by doing so, what we're going to see is the next step in this is we're actually going to start the transcoder manually. So we've created the resource. It's not costing you any money at this point. You didn't start the stream. So, you know, basically we don't fire up the underlying VM until you've hit start. There's another option here. So if your workflow is such that you don't want to have an explicit call to start a transcoder to process the video, we have a method to do that where you set the delivery method to CDN. And basically what this does is it allows your encoder to begin to send that stream immediately, whether the transcoder is running or not. And it will automatically start it in the background for you. So depending on your workflow, you have this flexibility of whether you want to explicitly start and stop on your streams or whether you want to allow it to start, automatically for you.
I like the idea of like set it up, get ready for it, and then when you're ready to actually go live, you've got like a start button.
And a lot of platforms that have built a live streaming experience, right? They literally have a button on them and that says go, right? Yeah. And that allows you to start, you pull a preview back, whatever you want to do. So,
yep, great. All right, so it looks like we got a lot of information, like a lot of data came back here. from this, and it looks like we've got this source connection information with a username and a password. I mean,
Yeah,
from
so
what I've done
that's
with
the
some live
important
stream,
bulk
it
of
looks like
stuff
this.
for sending video in, right? You need
Okay.
to know where to send it, right? So this is your RTMP URL and your stream name. And in your case, you have authentication turned on, so random people can't just start streaming. Except we're on a video and random people could start streaming.
All right. Well, let me go set this stuff up in my OBS. So I need to grab this RTMP URL here, and I know I'm doing this off screen just so I don't have to show the OBS. The stream key is going to be the stream name in OBS, correct. And then I have the username and the password. Put that in here. All right, so I've applied that. Okay, so I've got that in OBS ready to go.
Perfect. So now we're going to want to start it.
Okay, so now I have to find, let's see, we have a put operation to start a live stream. And it looks like we have a parameter where we have to pass in an ID value. So let's go back here.
Yeah, and this is where, this is one of the things I love about Postman is what I've done on my side, and I know Ian, you were playing with this yesterday as well, is I use the test script feature to save environment variables and spit out interesting things to the console and do this. So, what you'll see in my collection on GitHub for my tutorials is I tend to save all these variables that I think I'm going to need in the future as Postman variables, and then when I go and run live stream, it's already there. So when I want to start, stop, do other things, super handy, and just saves you a lot of time, saves you an incredible amount of cutting and pasting. So it's really cool, and it also helps me validate that the calls worked properly when I sent it, that I got the result I was expecting.
Yep, for sure. All right, so I'm going to grab that ID. I'm going to go put that in here, and we hit send. And it says that it's starting. Now, is there a way to check the status? Has it like fully started? Like, how do I know that this is ready to start broadcasting? Or do I just keep trying to connect it until it works?
There's a couple ways. You can continue to hit this call, which is not what I would recommend, pulling this call endlessly, but you can. Don't know what that one is.
Oh, so starting is not allowed. Transcoder is in the started state, so it looks like in this case
there you go. So it's
already done. So all right.
The recommended way to do this is actually to use our webhooks feature. So the platform has the ability to call a webhook for a bunch of different events. One of those events is to get notified of a start, a stop, a video connect, a video disconnect, a video, recording completed. So there's a bunch of webhooks you can use, and those are a very powerful way to monitor the platform. And even while your stream is going, if your video drops or if you have a problem, you'll get notified.
Okay. Now on the free trial, if you look through the Wowza documentation, I can stream for 20 minutes at a time on the free trial. And then I have to go in and I have to tell it to start that live stream again every 20 minutes or so. All right, so if I come over to my dashboard, where would I see like the status of things? Like, can I actually start streaming this stuff? Like, where would I actually go find that?
Just go click on live streams right there up at the top. Hit refresh.
Oh, hit refresh.
Or just go home. Just click on, there you go. Available streams right there.
Okay, available streams. There we are.
So there's the ones we've created.
Okay, so we've got one started. So I originally misspelled delivery method. I had written out deliver method, and someone in chat caught that. So appreciate that. April, thank you, April, for pointing that out. So this is the one that we're going to look at here. If I click on that, all right. So we see that it started, but I'm not actually sending any data to Wowza yet. but we see that frame size and outbound rates and all that kind of stuff. So if I go into
And
OBS and start
what
streaming, it should show up
what
here.
we what we're doing here is when we set this up is, we're taking a single stream in. So Ian's going to send us a 2.5 megabit stream, whatever he's going to send, and we're going to create an adaptive bitrate set of output streams and deliver those over HLS so it can be viewed on any device under any conditions. So you may not have the bandwidth available to view that top level stream of 2.5 megabits per second, but you may have the ability to view 1 megabit per second. So you're going to get a slightly lower resolution and a slightly lower bit rate in order for you to be able to see the stream. And it's, the video player is going to adapt that itself, whether that be on a web page, an iOS device, a TV, whatever it is, to do the best it can under the conditions you're viewing it.
Okay. Cool. Well, we can see my printer showing up here in Wowza. If we come back over to creating a live stream, was there anything in here about how they can view that, or do we go into like actually fetching that live stream to grab that information?
Yeah, because so what happens is when you first create the live stream, it's going to go off and do some stuff in the background. One of those things happens to be creating a player page for you and provisioning a player. So when you first create the live stream, typically that won't be done. So, your response back would be, in progress or something like that. But if you go, you can either fetch the player, or you can refetch the live stream information, and it will have a playback URL in there for you.
Okay, let's go call that a fetch a live stream. It looks like I need that ID value in here. If I send that over, again, we got lots of information here. Let's see if I can pull this up. So lots of information about it, source connection. Okay, so here's a whole section on the player.
You're going to get
here's the hosted page. Yep.
Yeah, so you get a few things here in your player, right? You get an embed code if you would like to embed the player on your own web page. Easy enough. You get a direct playback URL if you would just like to, if you have a player iOS app that's very specific or something, great, just use the playback URL. Or if you're just getting started and you want to go see the page somewhere, we create a very simple playback page for you, and that's what Ian's gonna go to, and we'll see here. So
I pasted the URL for this in all three of the chats. So you'll see it on YouTube, you'll see it on LinkedIn, you'll see it on Twitch. So if you want to click on that, I'm gonna follow that here myself, and we'll go check out the hosted page. And here's the hosted page, powered by Wowza. Click the play button, and there's my 3D printer streaming live on the interwebs. Printing out our little Postmanauts. We got about 6 minutes left on this print. So I'm gonna go ahead and draw another name from Twitch this time. So we drew one from LinkedIn earlier. I'm gonna draw one from Twitch, and I'm going to pick, apologies in advance if I mispronounce your username, but I'm gonna go with Kisame17. So let me know in chat if you're still there. Kisame17, if you just want to say something in chat, let me know that you're there, and then I'll give you our contact information for Twitter.
Now, one of the things you can do, Ian, is either from the UI or from the API, you can actually go look and see how many people are viewing this stream.
Okay, from the API itself?
From the API or from the user interface. So from the API, we're going to go down.
Got to use the API. That's why we're here.
We're going to go down to the stats section.
Stats. Okay.
What's it called? See, now we had it yesterday. What?
Fetch metrics.
There you go.
Okay. So fetch metrics looks like it needs that ID again. So let me go grab that ID. Send that over. So Kisame17, let me know that you're still watching on Twitch. Otherwise, I'll draw another name on Twitch. So be sure that you're chatting on all those platforms so I can grab a username. And we'll grab one from YouTube here in a few minutes. And then I'll show you the choices of what you're going to get to pick. because we do have these multicolor ones that are printing right now, but I've also got some alternates as well. So, all right, so we've got some stats here. Unique views 0. It says it's connected. We got bytes in, bytes out. Wow, you're sending out more bytes than I'm sending in. That's impressive.
Well, because we're sending out a set of renditions, right? So
oh, right, with all the different resolutions and stuff.
Yeah, and that's just about. So with a trial account, you're actually playing back directly from the transcoder, which is actually going to screw up our stats. With
Gotcha.
When you're in a production account, you actually play out via the CDN, and that's where our stats come from. So this is the bytes we're pushing to the CDN of that complete set. So
Arlemy is actually asking a good question here in chat. So Arlemy recently set up a Pi-hole, which is like an ad tracker blocking kind of thing. So it's asking whether it's actually going to block some of the analytics if they use like an ad blocker. Is that going to block any of the metrics?
Because I'll give you a current answer and a future answer. So right now with Wowza Video, most of our analytics come from the CDN, which the CDN tells us how many connections there were, who connected, and some other things that we can pull in. It just tells us whether that data was delivered or requested by a user. So we do have the ability with Flow Player to collect some player side analytics and pump those back into the platform. Those could potentially be blocked by some of the extensions. Typically, it's reporting analytic information. It depends on the blocker whether it it allows that or not. So potentially, but you're still going to get that information from the CDN. So you may not get as granular of information if folks are blocking things on the client side, but you will for sure get a lot of information from both the platform itself and the CDN edges as far as what they've delivered. And you get geographic information regardless. So, the CDN knows that it delivered some bytes in Asia, it delivered some bytes in the UK, it delivered some bytes in the US. So you'll get number of views in geographic and, how much data was delivered and things like that.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. Well, it looks like all this is working so far. And looks like we got a handful of other folks dropping by chat as well. So be sure to keep chatting because we still have to pick a user on YouTube. And so make sure that you're saying some stuff in chat. Looks like my print just finished, so we're going to see those things kind of drop down a little bit. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to switch over to my other printer so we can still see some stuff actually actively printing. And so the player shouldn't change. You can stay on the same player. Like you don't have to refresh or anything. I don't have to refresh or anything because my OBS is still going to broadcast what's coming off the printer, but we should see it printing those multicolored cubes now as well. But the little Postman figurines are all done. I'm going to go grab that off the printer here real quick. It's just going to take me a moment.
Cool.
And here we go. Hot off the presses. we got our Postman figurine. So there's some material around here that I need to clean off and take off a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Is there an amount of post processing you need to do to some of these things?
There's a tiny bit of post processing that you can do. So like wherever there's an overhang, like you can't just print out an empty space. There's got to be something underneath it to kind of prop it up. And so this plastic just breaks away afterwards.
Oh, cool.
It makes for a nice clean little print. And so, like I mentioned, this Postman out's going to have a nice rust-colored, well, it's kind of a sparkly rust-colored backpack, and it's got little black dots on the back and so on. So I just have to pull this support material off. You can't really see, but it's actually pretty hollow in this support material under here. But once it finishes printing, once I get it finished. Cleaned up, basically, you can see how much material is going to get removed from it. So, and so for the people whose names that I'm drawing, you'll have the option of the 3D print that just finished, or if you're feeling crafty, I've actually got some blanks. If you're into painting, I've actually got some blank Postmanauts, And so for the names that I'm drawing today, you can choose either the 3D printed one that you saw print, or you can choose one of the blanks, and I'll send one of these if you want to paint it yourself. You'll have that option. And so we've still got to pick one name off of YouTube. And so make sure that you're chatting on YouTube, because I'll be picking a name off of there pretty soon. Is there a public model for it? This one, I will double check if this one is a public model. I think this one I got off of a Patreon account. I follow a person on Patreon, and I grabbed their model.
How do you create the models for these things?
So I like using a tool called Tinkercad, where you're just pulling in like simple shapes, and then you can manipulate them, and it'll actually export as a model. And then you pull it into the software that basically gives it all the instructions of how to do it slice by slice, like layer by layer. Of, go move this motor to this position, start extruding plastic as you move to this position. And then while it's moving, it's just constantly extruding at that plastic. And then it says, okay, now move up to this Z level, go do the same thing, and move around to these XY coordinates. So very similar to how we were doing
across printer types.
No, well, so the instruction file is typically specific for a given printer.
Okay.
But for the model itself, the model itself is transportable, and you just put it into different slicing software based on the printer that you're using. Cool. And so if you're printing in resin, for example, like these are printed in resin, where these are printed in a different kind of plastic completely. These are actually mostly hollow. This one's actually pretty solid. This one weighs about 3 or 4 times as much as this one does. But different kinds of plastic you paint differently or model out differently. But printer to printer, I would put this same model into 3 different slicing software depending on the 3 different kinds of printers that I have. And then it slices it into the layer by layer instructions of what to do from there. Choman on YouTube says that everybody needs a Postman, so I don't quite have that many printed, but
got nothing but time, Ian.
Yeah. And then RC Maniac on YouTube says that Blender and ZBrush are also popular tools. I like using a tool called Tinkercad. It's really simple just to get up and running and started. But depending on how focused you want to get on the engineering side of it, you can get into full CAD software that will export those 3D models as well. So you can get in and do very intricate engineering types of designs. And that's the kind of software that the people that make 3D printers actually use, because many 3D printers are actually made up of 3D printed parts.
Funny, I was telling you about the book I was reading, right, where it's all about self-replication and von Neumann probes, right? So you send something out and it replicates and replicates. So 3D printers reprinting themselves. There you go.
Yep. All right, so we've got that up and running. We were able to pull some stats. So we looked at a handful of API endpoints here. We can go in. Looks like I can stop the live stream. Like we mentioned on the free trial, this is going to stream for about 20 minutes, and then it's going to automatically stop, and the player will stop working. But I can come back and I can restart it. So I'm just going to leave it on this other printer that's printing the cubes. But Barry, walk us through what are some of these other API endpoints? So you mentioned that live streams is kind of the cornerstone of getting this working.
Yeah, live streams is kind of the core, and what a live stream is really if you will, it's kind of a macro around a few things, right? So when you create a live stream, it's going to do a bunch of stuff for you that you could do individually if you wanted to, right? It's going to create and provision a transcoder. It's going to then create a set of output targets, which we call stream targets for that transcoder, and then attach them to the transcoder.
Gotcha.
It's going to provision, in your case, excuse me, we provision a player. All those things you can do individually, but a live stream is a real easy, clean way to do that.
Gotcha.
One of the things we were talking about was the ability to effectively syndicate outputs to other places, right? We could be sending our printer live stream to many places at once. And the way you do that is you just add additional stream targets. So if you were to go into the stream targets API, you can create a custom stream target. And that may be an output where you've you've got an RTMP ingest URL from Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitch, and you create a target for that, and then you attach that target to one of the transcoder outputs, and the transcoder is now pushing that stream to LinkedIn. So a bunch of things you could do there. You can certainly go, and when we set up this stream, we did not create a recording or a VOD archive. We certainly could have, right? We could have recorded this stream. It could have been placed into the asset management. And so you can, once the asset's in there, you can go and you can tag it, you can mark it published and unpublished, just like you would, things you would normally do with a CMS or an asset management platform.
Right.
And what that allows people to do is do live to VOD events. So in case people miss this event live, now there's an HLS archive of this where people can go view it on demand whenever they want. It's ready to go. It's staged in the CDNs for, it's infinitely scalable at that point. And you can easily create a search interface for people to go find these things,
Okay.
which is cool. So, when we created this, if we would have created the VOD archive for it, we then could go in and tag it with Postman or 3D printing, whatever. So now as you have your collection of videos, if I want to go into my account and say, hey, show me all the videos that have a tag of Postman, and it's going to return me a set of videos, which I can then express to a user via an interface with maybe, a preview or some information about it, and they can go pick it and play it.
Awesome.
So,
very cool. Just real quick,
to go play with this one. Look on the Wowza GitHub account, just GitHub Wowza Media Systems. Check out my tutorial session. There's blog posts and videos that go along with it. Kind of walks you through most of the API calls. I don't know if I covered every single one.
we'll have a look through some of those other APIs in a moment. Johannes was asking on LinkedIn, is there an API to control the 3D printer itself based on the outcome of a poll of which model to print? I'm actually working on something on the side right now for Postman that's going to be similar. It won't be a 3D printer, but it will be a collaborative API effort to actually control something like a 3D printer as far as the actual movement. So to specifically answer your question, they do have software that can control a 3D printer, external from the 3D printer itself. That software could be controlled through an API. So it is possible to build that type of mechanism. It currently doesn't exist, but it would be really interesting to do a print on demand kind of thing where you said, this is the thing that I want, and it just starts printing. They do have like software for people that have like fleets of 3D printers. They call it 3D printing farms, basically, and they've got like farm software where you can say like whichever printer's free, start printing this Postman out. If there's another printer free, print the little Minecraft figurine and so on, and they can control things that way. For people that have like dozens or hundreds of 3D printers. If you're just a casual user at home and you've only got 1 or 2 3D printers, then there's other software that's more meant for home use. But it would be a really interesting type of thing, like have a Twitch poll and then like have it start to print that thing. Most 3D prints though will take anywhere from half an hour to several hours. I made one that actually took 4 days to print, and it was this cool little treasure chest with a tentacle on it that actually opens up. And this is 8 different colors, and I did this on the printer that you saw earlier. But you can get into some pretty intricate designs, but this is also a very functional print, and this is all printed all in one piece. And so it actually printed on the printer like this. And when you take it off the print bed, it automatically closes. And so they built the hinge directly into the box. So again, you can get into very practical 3D prints. But right now, there's no API that will actually directly control a 3D printer. But I am working on something that'll be pretty fun.
I like the crowdsourced idea. Just like,
yeah.
Could be fun.
Cool. So let's go back and look at the live stream. So the live stream is now telling me the video is not found. So it looks like that 20-minute timer
Yeah, you timeout
expired.
hit.
Yep. And so what's nice about this is I don't have to go create a whole new live stream. I can just come back in and go back to my start and hit send here again. And now it's starting back up. And so if you're on that player page, you'll be able to go back and reload and it'll start playing again once it reconnects and everything. So my OBS is still transmitting, but it's going to throw an error until it actually starts getting that signal. Hopefully.
Yeah, as long as OBS
Yay
didn't
for
give
live
up.
demos. No, OBS. Oh, that's true, right? Because
OBS will time out eventually. If it's not
right.
getting any response, it'll say,
All right. Well, I stopped it and I told it to restart the stream.
That should do it.
Well, let's go back over here. So
Yeah,
we see it on the dashboard. So it should start playing over here on the player here momentarily. Play.
Yeah,
there we go. Yep. So yep, we're back up and running, and these little cubes are going to be done in about 45 more minutes. All right, so let's go back in and take a look at some of these other API calls. So there's different players. Looks like there's different kinds of players that Wowza makes available. Different assets. What would these assets be used?
So this is the CMS asset management platform I was telling you about. So what you can do is you can create an asset as you're creating live stream with live to VOD, right? So you're making a recording, or you can create an asset by just simply using the API to create an asset and uploading an MP4 file. And that MP4 file will then get processed and you can add tags to it and things like that, just like anything. And once the assets are in the system, you have the ability to expose the playback URL as an on-demand, or you can actually restream them as pseudo live, right? So if you had, if you wanted to create the 24/7 3D printing channel, and you uploaded 1,000 different 3D prints, right? You could create a playlist effectively that streamed 3D printing 24/7.
Okay.
Allowing people to just kind of hit that URL and see what's printing, see what's streaming at any given time.
Right. Okay. And then the recordings we talked about, like the video on demand and so on. Now, would the recordings be the pre-recorded videos? Because you mentioned when we were starting our chat today, you mentioned like you can stream something live, or you can upload a video and just have that stream later on. Is that what the recordings section is about?
So there's Wowza Video has several ways to create a recording, and those recordings don't need to be stored in the asset management system. If you don't need to persist those in the asset management framework, you can just create a standalone MP4 from your live stream. And once your live stream is finished, that recording gets completed and you can then download it and put it wherever you need to put it.
Okay.
So there's kind of two different models for whether you want us to manage your collection of recordings for you in our asset management system, or if you just want to pull them down and put them somewhere else for whatever use you have.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. All right. Well,
yeah.
Go ahead.
So two things I'll mention. Scheduling can be powerful. You can create schedules for when to start and stop streams, when to start and stop transcoders. You can create a transcoder that starts on a schedule, and maybe that transcoder is pulling an IP camera from somewhere, right? So you have that, and that's showing up. That stream is available from 9 to 5 on weekdays, whatever it is. So it can be fairly helpful for that. And you can also create a transcoder that just live streams a file. So if you want to say, hey, on Tuesday, I'm going to restream this webinar Tuesday at 8 a.m., you can just set that up and go and not have to worry about it.
Right. RC Maniac is asking on YouTube, if you have a paid Wowza account, what's the longest video that you can make? Is there a limitation?
We have people who have been running 24/7 streams for multiple years.
Really? Just
Yeah.
constant stream. Like, would that be
So
like a traffic cam or a weather cam kind of
exactly,
thing?
it's some sort of a web camera somewhere. We have one of our cool sites actually is wildlife cameras,
Oh yeah,
and they'll
nice.
stream like an eagle's nest or something like that. That's kind of cool, and yeah, those can go forever, and you can there's really no limits on a lot of this stuff. Now, obviously, there's limits on the size of recordings and the way you do recordings, things like that, because otherwise you run out of all the disk space in the universe. But the live stream themselves can run as long as you can have the source run.
Yeah. Nice. So, I mean, the nice thing about those live streams, provided you're not recording, but I've seen some interesting things around where they do like AI on a recording, where if it sees movement, it starts recording, and then when it no longer
Exactly.
sees
So
some amount of movement, it stops the recording. So you could
so here's
you
it.
could record, you could have a live stream of that eagle's nest. But if a bird actually lands in the nest, you start recording because you've
Yeah,
detected movement.
absolutely.
So then you've got a
And
recording of all the movement in the nest.
and you can do that with our API, right? So
Hmm.
the easy way to do that is you have your transcoder running, it's running 24/7, it's live streaming everything.
Mm-hmm.
You have your API set up so that if there's a trigger, you create a secondary stream target that's a recording target, and you
Oh, I see.
start and stop that based on the trigger, and out pops an HLS archive that is whatever duration and whatever event you wanted to capture.
Nice.
So there's definitely a workflow for that, and I've used that with customers actually when they have a workflow that really wanted the recording to go on on the big red button push, and then the recording to end when they stopped.
Gotcha. There's quite a lot in this in the API that you
It's
got
a
here. You've
very
got
deep API, and
yeah.
we don't try to be prescriptive for advanced users. There's a ton of stuff you can do. But we do try to provide you an easy way to do it, which is through the live stream, which we did, which, as you can see, we were up and streaming in a matter of minutes,
Right. Yeah, it
and
was super
talking a lot
fast.
about it the whole way around. So
What's interesting is if I go back and try to pull the metrics for that live stream. So we've had several people in chat watching it kind of as we go. But it still
yeah, and
says
that's
unique
because
views is
it's
0.
because you're on a trial.
Oh, okay.
So the trial account isn't going to give you the full statistic. It's going to give you statistics about the stream itself, but the
Okay.
engagement and the viewership aren't going to come through because we're not routing you through the CDN.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. Cool. All right. Let's go back and so yeah. So these are just little calibration cubes just so I can make sure that my printer's actually working properly. I can go in and I can measure these later on and like tighten up the belts and change out any parts or whatever to make sure it's printing like, very specific sizes of things. So these are what we call little calibration cubes. And
How
then it looks like
expensive are the materials like to print one of those cubes? Basically, what did it cost?
oh, pennies. So
Okay.
a whole spool of filament is anywhere from $20 to $30, and that's it's typically a kilogram of plastic at a
Okay.
time. And these cubes, um, I'll pull that up here in just a minute. There it is. I'll get the weight of it here in just a moment. So if you factor in, let's use round numbers to say $25 a spool for a kilogram. These 4 cubes are going to use about 100 grams of that material. So $2.50 worth of material to make these 4 cubes. So each of these cubes is, what, 60 cents?
Nice.
So it's
Again, much
really,
less than
really
I
inexpensive.
expected. It's amazing
Yeah.
how affordable this has become to do
Yeah.
stuff. I'm probably gonna just need one just to play with.
Right.
I got room
So
right over here.
someone's asking if I want to do a speed benchy on the bamboo printer. So this printer will print the little tugboat benchmark calibration in about
So like
17, 18
a
minutes.
known
So
size of a known thing.
yeah, it's and it does it extremely like really really fast. But yeah, I wanted something that was going to take a little while so that it wasn't just like a really quick kind of thing. And then Mary also mentioned in chat we have some great API tutorials about other typical workflows in their documentation over at Wowza as well. So
Yeah, the Docs team does a fantastic job creating tutorials, documentation. Hopefully people read it. It's very well done, super useful.
yeah.
I use it all the time when I'm with customers. I can Google very fast and go find things and say, well, yes, we can do that. Here's how. So it's great to have that resource.
Awesome. Well, I'm gonna drop the link to our Postman account for Twitter back in chat. So the person that I chose on Twitch didn't respond, so I'm gonna need someone else to chat over on Twitch. I know RC Maniac is over on Twitch from time to time, but I'm gonna pick Caitlin, who actually just chatted on YouTube. So Caitlin, you're also a giveaway recipient. So far we got Mary and Caitlin. So you'll have the choice between the Postmanot that I printed earlier, and I'll get all the support material pulled off of here, or you can choose one of the blank ones if you want to print it yourself. I've dropped the contact information for the Postman Twitter account. If you want to contact us there, we will need your name and your address, maybe an email address as well, and we'll make sure to get in touch with you and chat about like which of the models that you'd like, and we'll get those sent out to you.
I feel like there's going to be a lot of people printing Postmanonauts.
Postmanauts, maybe. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, there are millions and millions of free models out there. Like you were asking, like how do you actually make these models? These models already exist. You just have to pull it into your slicer software for your printer, and it does it layer by layer, and then you send it
Yeah,
over to the printer.
I remember
hours later.
back in the dark ages when I was in school, we used to do 3D renderings in the computer lab, and we would find
Okay.
open source models of crazy stuff. And
Nice.
there was one like of the last Starfighter, which was the incredibly complex 3D model floating around that would take hours to render, which probably takes milliseconds to render nowadays. But dig that one up and print it.
Yep.
What's the actual what's the physical size of your printer bed here? How big of something could you print?
So the print plate that we see there is about 25 centimeters square. So convert that into inches, is about 10 inches by 10 inches, and it'll do the same as the height as well. I'm actually building another printer right now that'll be 35 centimeters all around, so it'll be about 13, 14 inches around, cubed, and that'll let me get into like cosplay armor. I want to do like helmets and stuff like that. So.
Well, then I'm assuming you could do components too and assemble them into bigger, like the Iron Man armory suit you were talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, you can build them as big as you want, but the thing with 3D printing is the larger you make it, the more stable you have to make it, because as these things are moving around, the whole frame is going to move and shake, and so there's a balance between the speed of what you want to do and the size of what you want to do to make sure that you're getting the quality that you expect. So it's very similar to everything else in the world, right? You can get it done fast, you can get it done cheap, you can get it done quick. Or high quality, and you get to pick two of those.
Yes,
exactly. It's very much the same with 3D printing as well. So cool. Well, thank you, Barry, for walking us through the API. So again, you can just go search for the Wowza collection in here. I'm going to drop that link in chat for everyone as well, so you can definitely go check that out.
This was super fun. It's a great way to make presenting an API fun. So I appreciate your leading us down the 3D printing road. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun being able to do something interesting and practical. Or it's like, I mean, I love tinkering with APIs, and that's why I love Postman. That's why I love working at Postman, because you get to tie all these things together, and I love figuring out how can I make this API talk to this API to talk to this API to go do something interesting. So yeah, we've got all kinds of interesting stuff. So.
One of the comments in chat was, he's like, "Hey, we're gonna mix Octoprint and Wowza to automate the whole thing. So you start to print, it starts the stream, the print ends and ends the stream. It's like I love it. That's fun times." There's
Yeah, there's
you
a
know, streaming gets a lot of notoriety for OTT platforms, right? And all the stuff you see in the media and entertainment world, and that's it's just the tip of the iceberg in the streaming use cases out there, and we have customers that do everything you could imagine, right? Traffic cameras, streaming church services, streaming devices like 3D printers for remote viewing. So there's a wide world of things you can do with streaming that are super fun use cases, way beyond just entertainment.
Yep. Awesome. Well, I still have one more Postman to give away.
I'm gonna go join the Twitch stream. Hold on.
I'm just gonna go pick someone else off of LinkedIn. I think I saw Johannes chat a bunch of times. So Johannes Nikolai, if you can contact us at our Postman Twitter account as well, that would be great. I'll try to send you a LinkedIn connection as well, just so we can make sure we can get you one of those too. And then just writing down your name here. Cool. We like to end our stream with community shoutouts. So Barry, do you have anything going on at Wowza? Do you have anything going on? Any sort of meetups or conferences that Wowza is going to be at? Anything like that you want to sort of call out for us?
Oh, what is some upcoming stuff? So there's some industry associations that folks may or may not be aware of, but like the Streaming Video Technical Alliance, which an active member of, we will be at their meetings. There are a lot of regional video meetups, including a great community on Slack called Video Dev, where you can get all kinds of information about upcoming events in the video world in maybe in your area. There's one, gosh, I think it's this afternoon in Montevideo, for just the video meetup. Big trade shows. April is NNB, which is a huge trade show, but actually super fun to go and geek out on video gear if you're ever into something like that.
Nice.
So, and then just keep an eye out on our blogs and LinkedIn. Lots of stuff going on. I do my fearless predictions for 2023 every January, and then look back and see how right or wrong I was. That
Nice.
will be coming out soon, so feel free to make fun of me as I post those. So.
Awesome. What were some of your predictions for 2022?
Oh gosh, you're gonna make me go back and look. One of them was ad-supported streaming. So if you'll hear the terminology FAST a lot, which is basically effectively it's cable TV but streamed, right? So it's streaming channels where you don't have to pay for a subscription, but you're subjected to advertising. And last year, the growth of those was exponential, because people have a certain amount of subscription fatigue. They get tired of having to subscribe to 20 different streaming services, and sometimes you just want to channel surf. So this is a way to do that with streaming instead of having to have a cable subscription.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't remember the last time I sat down to just watch live TV. Like everything I watch is video on demand now, or I'll spend time on Twitch and just interact with things. I like the interactivity of it a lot more. I know interactive TV was meant to be a thing like 20 years ago and never really took off. But
I think you'll start to see some interesting stuff with some of that. I think there's one of the things I think one of my predictions, if you will, for 2023 is rather than serving people advertisements, get them to actually do something, right? So 1,000 impressions of an ad is great, but one purchase trumps that, right? So if you can give somebody a way to easily make a purchase, if we were throwing up a link or on top of this for someone to go buy a Postmanot, that's actionable. If you can do that within the live stream itself, there's some really interesting ways to monetize, particularly for creators. I think creators and influencers. I think there's going to be some real interesting stuff going on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think that's what the interactive TV was meant to be back in the day. Is like, oh, if you like that outfit that so and so's wearing on the show, here's where to go buy those clothes,
buy it now.
And stuff like that. Yeah,
and you're starting to see that a little bit. It's starting to come in. So
yeah,
it's cool.
Well, be a matter of time before we see all those APIs tying in together for e-commerce and
There you go.
live TV and all that kind of stuff with image recognition and all that kind of stuff. So next week we've got a really interesting live stream planned out. Joyce and Arlemy are going to be doing something. And I'll be involved in that a little bit as well. If you want to check out more about 3D printing and programming, I also live stream on Twitch, just using the same username that you see here, Ian Douglas 736. I'm also on Twitter if you want to give me a follow. Shameless shout out to myself. But Postman's going to be at a lot of events this year. We've got a lot of stuff planned. We've got live streams pretty much every week. We've also got our intergalactic session, which is kind of a live workshop that's free to register. So you can go find all that stuff on the Postman website. And I'll be doing the interactive workshop next week for the intergalactic session, and then I'll be helping Joyce and Arlemy on the live stream next week. So thanks everyone for hanging out and chat. Congratulations to all of the people that got the giveaway prize today. Please get in touch with us on the Twitter account, the Postman Twitter account. And we'll get your mailing information, and you can let us know which of the Postmanauts you want. If you want the one that we just printed, I'm starting to get this one cleaned up a tiny bit here. But then I've also got these blank ones in kind of a light pale and a gray as well that you can go in and paint yourself if you like. And we'll catch everybody next week on our live stream. So enjoy your week. Enjoy the upcoming weekend. Stay safe and warm, or stay cool if you're in a warm place. And we'll catch you next time. Thanks again, Barry, for your time today.
Thanks, audience, and thank you, Ian. It was great. I enjoyed it.
All right. See you, everyone.